Ethan Malik never imagined that a quick weekend camping retreat with his 8-year-old daughter Amina would lead him into a storm that would change his entire life. A single dad for 3 years. He had grown used to silence from a wife who abandoned them. Silence in a house that once held laughter. Silence in his own heart after he promised himself never to fall for anyone again. But fate had a different plan. That morning, he stopped at a remote mountain convenience store to buy extra supplies. That is where a black SUV screeched into the parking lot, and out stepped a woman who looked completely out of place. A tailored coat, diamond earrings, frustration glowing on her face like frostbite. She was Alina Hart, the youngest CEO of Hart Global Industries, a woman whose name alone occupied news headlines, whose face graced magazine covers, and whose company practically ran half the tech infrastructure in the country. And yet right now she looked lost. She marched up to the store attendant demanding directions with a mixture of authority and panic, explaining she was on her way to inspect a remote project site, but her GPS had died. Ethan, watching from the side, tried to stay out of it. He didn't like rich people, didn't trust them. But when Amina tugged his sleeve and whispered, "Daddy," she looked sad, he couldn't ignore it. He stepped forward, offered directions, and Alina, who normally never thanked anyone, murmured a quiet, "Almost embarrassed, thank you." Moments later, fate struck in the form of a brutal winter storm. The wind roared without warning, swallowing the road ahead and forcing visibility to near zero. Alina's SUV skidded on a patch of ice, spun out, and slammed into a snowbank. Ethan saw it happen in his rearview mirror. Without thinking, he turned his truck around. He found Alina trying to kick open her jammed door, snow piling around her like a frozen cage. "You'll freeze out here," he shouted as he pulled the door open. She wanted to argue she wasn't the type to show weakness, but her shivering body betrayed her. With the storm intensifying, Ethan had no choice but to take her and Amina to the nearest shelter, a small abandoned ranger cabin deep in the woods. Inside, the temperature was freezing. The wind howled violently through the cracked wooden walls, and darkness swallowed the room as the storm cut off what little light remained. Ethan lit a fire while Amina wrapped herself in blankets. Alina, sitting stiffly in her designer coat, pretended she wasn't freezing, but her trembling hands exposed the truth. She had never been this close to nature or danger before. She wasn't a CEO now. She was a woman fighting the cold. As the hours dragged on, the temperature continued to drop. Alina's lips turned pale as she hugged her knees, trying to preserve warmth. Ethan watched her for a moment, conflicted. He didn't owe her anything. She was from a world that had never cared for people like him, but he couldn't let a human freeze in front of him. Amina tugged his arm again. "Daddy." She needs a blanket too. It was the softness of his daughter, the kindness he wanted to protect in her heart, that pushed him forward. He offered Alina the last extra blanket. But the storm worsened, and even with the fire, it wasn't enough. The cabin's insulation failed. Cold air seeped through every crack, and the wind roared like a beast outside. Alina's shivers grew violent, uncontrollable. She tried to hide it, but her teeth chattered. She was losing body heat fast. And then her voice broke through the silence, soft, trembling, and completely unrecognizable from the powerful CEO the world feared. "Ethan," she whispered, barely audible. He turned toward her, confused. Her eyes, usually sharp, calculating, now glistened with something fragile, something human. Can I slip under your blanket?" Her voice cracked. "Just until the storm comes." "Please." Ethan froze. Time froze. The fire crackled between them. Amina slept peacefully, unaware that her father's world had just tilted. Ethan swallowed hard. He didn't trust CEOs. He didn't trust women who walked away from responsibilities. But the woman sitting in front of him wasn't a CEO right now. She was freezing, vulnerable, and asking him for help with a voice that sounded like a confession. His heart, one he thought had died years ago, felt a faint, unwanted spark. Outside, the storm screamed. Inside, her words lingered between them like forbidden warmth. And that was the moment Ethan Malik realized this night wasn't just about survival. It was the beginning of something neither of them were ready to face. The night grew colder, the storm louder, and the cabin walls shook as if nature herself wanted to test the strength of every heart inside. Ethan hesitated only a moment before, lifting the blanket and motioning for Alina to move closer. She wrapped herself into the shared warmth slowly, carefully, as though afraid her presence might break something in him. Their shoulders brushed lightly, sending an unexpected jolt through both of them. Ethan felt her trembling gradually fade as heat seeped back into her body. For a long time they stayed silent, two people from opposite worlds sharing a moment neither could have imagined hours earlier. Alina finally whispered, almost ashamed, "I'm not as strong as people think." Ethan didn't reply immediately. He was surprised she spoke at all, but then she continued, her voice cracking like ice, beneath heavy footsteps, explaining how she'd inherited her father's empire only to discover it came with betrayals. loneliness, and people who worshipped her power but never cared for her soul. She had spent years building walls, controlling everything, because losing control terrified her. Tonight, nature forced her to surrender. Ethan listened, unsure what to say. He wasn't used to powerful people showing vulnerability, but the more she spoke, the more he saw someone tired of carrying the world alone. When she finally asked about his past, Ethan stiffened. His chest tightened, but he answered anyway. He told her about his wife leaving when Amina was 5, leaving him a note, a silent house, and a daughter who asked him every night why her mother didn't love them. He told her how he worked 2 jobs, how he stopped believing in love, how he lived only to protect his daughter, and yet here he was sharing warmth with a woman who should have been a stranger. The storm raged on, but the tension between them softened. Alina shifted closer than necessary, and whispered, "You're a good father." Ethan, he felt those words hit deeper than they should have. No one had told him that in years. Before he could respond, a loud crash shook the cabin. A tree had fallen nearby. Alina panicked, clinging to his arm reflexively. Ethan held her steady, reassuring her until she loosened her grip. Their eyes met too close, and something hot, fragile and dangerous sparked between them. By morning, the storm had settled, leaving a silver world outside. Rescue teams finally arrived. But something in that cabin had changed both their lives. As they stepped outside, Alina turned to Ethan with hesitation, unusual for Ethan. "Can I see you, gang?" And Amina? He raised a brow. "People like you don't spend time with people like us." She shook her head and whispered, "Last night proved I'm still human. Don't take that from me." Days later, the news channels buzzed with the headline, "Billionaire CEO saved by unknown single, father after storm disaster." Cameras swarmed. Reporters demanded details, but Alina spoke only one sentence that shocked.